Hey everybody, Christian here, and today I'm showing you Wazuh, the open source security platform. Guys, I can't believe this is free and open source because it is so incredibly powerful, and if you ever wanted to make your HomeLab secure, this is the only platform that you're gonna need. I just recently deployed the Wazuh platform on one of my virtual servers, connected all my other devices to it like my Mac Mini, my Windows servers and virtual and physical Linux servers, and now it's telling me whether they are all secured, if there is any misconfiguration or vulnerability existing on those systems. It is so freaking cool. If you would like to increase the security of your entire HomeLab completely for free, or you want an advanced cybersecurity platform for your studies, this is the right video for you. So let's get into it. A big thanks goes out to Wazuh for sponsoring this video. Alright everybody, so as always I want to give you a quick overview of the Wazuh platform, and let's learn a bit more about the different capabilities and how we can use it to secure our entire HomeLab. As you can see on the official homepage wazuh.com, this is the open source security platform that unifies XDR and CM protection for all your endpoints and cloud workloads. Let's first talk about XDR, which stands for Extended Detection and Response. And an XDR platform is a system that collects telemetry from all the different endpoints you have deployed in your IT infrastructure. So those could be servers, computers, individual workstations, and so on. And it uses this data to find out whether a client is vulnerable to specific attack techniques. It detects malicious activity on these devices using behavioral analysis, and it is even clever enough to respond to those actions, like blocking malicious activity, for example. Then we have also the CM part, which stands for Security Information and Event Management, and just like XDR, this is a platform that collects telemetry and information from the different endpoints, but where XDR is more about the detection and response actions, a CM focuses more on aggregating and analyzing this data for security monitoring and compliance. So that means things like log analysis, vulnerability detections, configuration assessment, or alerting and notifications. So Wazuh is a huge platform that unifies those two systems. To me, it's unbelievable how many capabilities it has, and it is a super valuable tool for cybersecurity architects and analysts to play around with all sorts of different threat types and real-world scenarios in your HomeLab, and it helps you to master skills in cybersecurity. But also, if you're not directly working in the cybersecurity business, I think this should definitely matter to you, because I honestly think learning cybersecurity is so important for any IT role these days. And furthermore, it's also extremely valuable as a HomeLab tech nerd. So even if you're not using all these different capabilities of the system, like the threat intelligence part and all of the integrations it has, it is an amazing technology to protect your servers and learn more about security best practices and configuration. And also you get rich incident reports on all your IT infrastructure to prevent something bad from happening. Just to mention, they recently released Wazuh in the version 4.8, adding some incredible changes like a completely redesigned vulnerability detector, as well as an improved user interface and user experience. I'm going through all of that later in a few minutes, but let me first tell you how to get easily started with it and how to install Wazuh in your HomeLab. So let's simply click on Install Wazuh and deploy this on one of my virtual Linux servers. The first thing that we need to learn about Wazuh is that it consists of three main components: the indexer, the server, and the dashboard that can be installed all in one on a server or separately. And it also has a security agent that we need to install on the endpoints that we want to monitor. They also have some great installation guides and instructions on their official documentation pages, so here you can learn about the different components and how to deploy them step by step on your IT infrastructure. However, if you're following my channel for a while, you probably know I'm a big fan of installation alternatives, especially if there is a section that covers the Docker deployment, so this is always my preferred way to deploy something on my HomeLab. But just know it is completely up to you. You also find other alternatives how to deploy this using virtual machines, using cloud environments, Kubernetes, or install it from source if you want. There's even a section how to deploy this with Ansible, so this is pretty cool. By the way, if you're entirely new to Docker and you don't know what this is, Wazuh also has some great installation instructions for the Docker engine. But if you've watched some of my other videos, you probably already have a Docker environment deployed somewhere, and you have your virtual Linux server with the Docker engine installed somewhere ready, so you can directly jump to the next section, which covers the Wazuh Docker deployment. So you can deploy Wazuh on a single node or on a multi-node stack. So in this video, I want to use the single node deployment. This is the most easiest one, and I think for a simple HomeLab, the single node deployment should be totally sufficient. So let me first of all connect to one of my demo servers where we can easily deploy Wazuh, and let's create a new project directory that I'm just gonna calling Wazuh Demo 1. First, you need to increase the max map count on your Docker host. So this is simply just a command that you need to copy and paste from the official instructions. Just execute it with sudo. You also should configure the etc sysctl config to set this configuration setting permanently. So let's simply add this setting here at the end of the file and set the value to what is described in the documentation. Save and exit. And if the server is rebooted, simply execute this command to check if the value was added successfully during boot up. As you can see, this just worked, and we can now continue installing the Wazuh platform. The first step tells us to clone the Wazuh repository to our system with this command here. So you could basically execute this on your server, which clones the entire repository with the README files and all the deployment configurations and templates. But I personally prefer to clone this first to my local workstation, so I could easily just copy the files that are necessary, and I can make changes to the configuration and Docker Compose files, and updating this wouldn't just overwrite my existing config. So what I'm going to do is I'm opening a new tab. So the left one is on the remote server and this is on my local Mac, and go into my project directory. So here I'm just going to execute this command here, clone the Wazuh directory. By the way, this version you should probably update and take from the current documentation pages. So always make sure you're checking out the current version here and not what I'm using in this tutorial video. So this now pulls down everything from the GitHub repo. Enter that directory and open it in VS Code. As you can see, this contains all of the files of the repository. So here in this directory, you can find the Docker Compose template for the single node deployment, as well as one for creating the indexer certificates that we need later, and a config directory that contains all of the necessary configuration files for the Wazuh platform. You can customize all of these things once you have copied this to your server. So I'm just opening a new connection to my demo server. Go into the Wazuh Demo 1 directory that we've just created, and then copy those files here into the project directory. Alright, so let's quickly check on the server if the files are there. Yep, so that you can see there's everything. And now we can continue with the installation instructions. The next step is to create the self-signed certificates for the indexer component of Wazuh. And that you can easily do with the generate indexer certs.yaml file. So this is also a Docker Compose template that will simply just execute a container that will run, create these certificates in this specific directory, and then just exit. If you have an HTTP proxy that you need to customize, you can also set this environment variable here. But generally speaking, you don't need to customize anything in this file, so you can just execute the Docker Compose up command. Let's copy this and execute it on my server. So I need to remove the dash here because I've installed the new version of Docker Compose. So this will now pull down the image to generate the certificates and runs it. If you can see the certificate files in the config Wazuh indexer SSL certs directory, you know that everything worked correctly, and you can now just basically start up the container, because as it is described in the Wazuh documentation, the Docker Compose project is already pre-configured correctly. There's nothing you need to customize. But as you might know, I just like to do a couple of things in the Docker Compose YAML file. For example, issue trusted TLS certificates with my reverse proxy traffic, and a couple of other cleanup tasks that I just like to have in the Docker Compose file. For example, I just don't like this version statement here, so I'm just going to remove this because it's a deprecated setting that you don't need anymore. And also, I don't like this restart always statement, so I'm just going to replace the always statement with unless stopped. By the way, if we take a closer look at this Docker Compose template, you can see that this template deploys 3 different containers: one for the Wazuh Manager component, one for the Indexer component, and one for the Dashboard component. And it also has a couple of persistent volumes that store all the important persistent data, for example, the config directory, but also the telemetry that you collect from all your agents. By the way, this is something you have to keep in mind if you want to change the secret password for the admin user, for example. You should definitely change this to something else. However, you need to make sure that you not just change the passwords in this Docker Compose file, because Wazuh also relies on those passwords in other configuration files here in this directory. For example, the internal users configuration has the pre-configured usernames with the password set in the Docker Compose files. And if you need to change those administrative passwords, you have to follow this instruction here. Change the passwords for the Wazuh user, for example, the indexer user, the API user. So you need to execute this command here to generate a new hash. And then you also have to go into the specific configuration files, update the hash, and then you can change it with a real password, or you use a .env file to pass in the variable securely to the containers. And this is how you would be able to change the username and password. So I'm not going to do this in this short example. I've done this on my production instance. So this, of course, uses the self-signed certificates that we've just generated. And I just like to deploy trusted TLS certificates because I've already deployed the Traefik reverse proxy on my server demo 1. So as you can see, there is Traefik already running that will be able to issue trusted TLS certificates using Let's Encrypt and a Cloudflare DNS challenge. By the way, if you want to know how that's working, I've made some video tutorials about Traefik, so I'm going to link that in the description box down below. So you just need to add the Traefik labels to the Wazuh dashboard container. So this is the component that you connect to with your browser. So first I want to remove this port here because I don't need it when I expose the web service using Traefik. I will just copy paste the labels that I've prepared for this tutorial. So this will enable the Traefik listener on that container so Traefik is able to expose it. I will use this DNS name wazudemo1.serverdemo1.home.cl-creative.de. Note, this is a DNS record that resolves the internal DNS name to my local IP address of the server demo 1. I'm using the TLS encryption and the Cloudflare certificate resolver. And what is now also important is that you need to create a service label for the load balancer and change the server scheme to HTTPS because the internal web service of the Wazuh dashboard is using HTTPS and not HTTP like any other unencrypted web services. And you also have to change the port number to the internal port number 5601. So once you have done this, you also need to connect those containers to the Traefik reverse proxy network, for example. So I'm adding the network front end. So this is a Docker network where the Traefik reverse proxy is connected to, and just connect this service here as well. By the way, those link statements here are also deprecated settings, so it's actually not recommended to use them. So I will basically just remove it from the dashboard and add all the other containers to the same network. So that is much better. And now I think anything else should be correct. So we can basically just now run the docker compose up command. So let's go to my server and let's execute this command. Let's start it in the background, and then we need to wait a bit until the Wazuh platform has been deployed and the database is seeded and so on. As always, that just might take some time, so use that for a short break, get something to drink, or what is even better, check out my Patreon page, because there you can watch all of my tutorials completely for free without any ad interruptions from YouTube. And you also get some additional write-ups with all of the commands, instructions, and templates I'm using in those video tutorials. So just check it out, and it would be nice if you consider supporting me there, because that helps with creating all of these free tutorials and guides for you. Okay, so everything is finished. Let's check if the Docker containers are all started correctly. As you can see, yep, everything should be up and running. And let's open a new browser tab to connect to our Wazuh demo1.serverdemo1 instance. And yep, that should show us the login page of Wazuh. Now we need to log in with our administrator username and password. As you should know, you can set this in the Docker Compose YAML file in the config directories. So I'm just going to use the indexer username for the admin user and log into the platform. So now Wazuh is checking if all of the components are correctly configured, up and running, and if they can communicate with each other. And now we are taken to the dashboard. Now, as I can see, there is not much on here because we haven't connected any agents to this platform, so it didn't collect any telemetry yet. And this is definitely the first thing that we should do is let's add our first agent. You can select the operating system here and the architecture as well. I first want to add a Windows client here. On one of my Proxmox servers, I've already installed a demo Windows server that we can use for this demonstration. So let's click on that. It should be up and running now. So let's go to the Wazuh platform. We select Windows. Now we need to add the server address, which is usually the DNS name of your Wazuh dashboard. And we can remember the server address, so we don't need to type it in always. Let's give this agent a name, for example, Windows Demo 1. And you can also select one or more existing groups, so then you can group servers or clients and add your own hierarchy or organization to your security platform. So for now, I'm just going to select the default group here. And then we need to copy this command here, go back to the Windows client, open a PowerShell as an administrator, of course, and paste in the command, hit enter, and that will install the Wazuh agent on Windows. Now, once this is installed, we just need to execute this command here, net start Wazuh SVC to start the daemon, hit enter, and the Wazuh service is starting. So when we now go back to the Wazuh platform, we can just close this window here and go back. We should see a new agent is enrolled with the name Windows Demo 1. And after some time, it should be connected. So let's refresh. And as you can see, now the agent became active. We get some detailed information about this agent, such as the IP address, the operating system, the version of the Wazuh client. And if we go back to the dashboard, you can see that the agent now shows up in here. Now, let me first show you how to add another one. For example, let's go in here to endpoint summary under the server management tab. And let's add another one. For example, let's deploy a Linux client for now on one of my demo servers. So I'm just picking the Debian AMD 64-bit installation here. Just give it a server demo 2. So let's install it on that machine here, for example. Let's copy the command and let's open a new shell to this machine. And it's just as easy as that. You just execute this command. It will download the Debian packages and install it. Once this is done, you can start the agent by executing those 3 commands here. Just paste it to the terminal and then the agent should be up and running as well. And now if we go back to the overview dashboard, as I can see, the severity counter starts adding up. There are already thousands of security items that I need to take care of. And if we click on that, you can get access to all of the telemetry logs that were collected from those clients and can inspect basically anything on this platform. It's really cool. Here you can select the date, you can set an absolute date or relative date. For example, if you want to get the latest 7 days. Of course, we just recently connected the client, so it doesn't show up anything here. But let me connect to my Wazuh production instance because this is already running for a couple of weeks. And let me walk you through some of the interesting sections here of the Wazuh platform. As you can see from the main overview dashboard, you can just jump into all of the individual sections, whatever you want to see. For example, in endpoint security, we find the configuration assessment, malware detection, and file integrity monitoring. We have threat intelligence. We have security operations with compliance settings like GDPR, and also cloud security. That tells us more about the different service applications like Docker, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Office 365 to make sure our servers are secured and that we apply best practice configuration, that we harden our devices, and that we get notified of anything bad that could happen. Now, what I definitely would recommend you to do before you start playing around with all of the different sections here, that you should take a look at the official documentation pages again and go into the capability sections under the user manual. So here you can learn more about the different sections in the Wazuh platform, what is actually happening here. For example, in the security configuration assessment, so this is a process to verify that all the systems and the devices are secured to best practice configuration settings. Those best practices, by the way, come from the CIS benchmark list. This is the Center for Internet Security, and this is a non-profit organization that publishes some best practice configuration lists for all sorts of different technologies, and you find them for different types of services like cloud providers here, but also Linux distributions, network devices, operating systems, those type of things. And if you have a bunch of different devices in your network and you want to make sure that you configure them according to their best practices, you would have to download these PDF files and go through thousands of items, manually check on all your devices if you have set this specific setting. And of course, you can imagine this is just impossible to do manually. So here the Wazuh platform helps us with doing those configuration assessment because it automatically goes through all of these benchmark lists and automatically checks the configuration using the Wazuh agent on our devices. And if we go here and select a specific agent, for example, we want to check the configuration of my Windows production device, which is deployed with a Windows 11 operating system, I can select this agent and it goes through all of the different best practice configuration and tells me which rules have passed, which rules have failed. I get now an overall score of 33%, which is honestly not that much, but we can also jump into all of the details here and make sure that we change those configurations on our devices. Now, as you can see, by default, Windows 11 doesn't have too many configuration settings that are set according to those best practices. Now, what is cool in Wazuh, it gives us some general description of why this setting should be enabled and why it should be configured this way. It also gives us some clear instructions how to change it on our system. For example, this was a test that failed, so currently the relaxed minimum password length limit is not set to enabled on my Windows 11 machine. And now I would have to go to this specific registry key and enable this setting here. And if you go through that list, you could also filter it by failed when you just click on that number here, for example. Then it only shows us the tests that have failed on my systems. It's definitely a good idea to go through this and check your devices. A bit more interesting than configuring Windows 11, for example, is what I have configured on my Ubuntu production servers, for example. So when I check my server production 1, you can see that has a bit higher score of 40%, but it is also not the best, honestly. So there are 73 tests that have passed, 107 that have failed. Always keep in mind those are just general recommendations by the CIS benchmark list, and some items might be more important to you than others. For example, I don't really care in my HomeLab if the /tmp is on a separate partition on my server. That is not really important to me. But other items, for example, make sure that the UFW firewall service is enabled, is probably a bit more critical, and it would help to make my servers more secure according to the CIS best practice configurations. So definitely take your time, review those items in the configuration assessment. I honestly haven't completed this myself for my production devices, but I would definitely do that and go through most of these items. I think it would be nice to make some sort of follow-up video on some of the best practices that I believe might be mostly important for us HomeLab people. So if you want to see that, make sure to like this video and leave me a comment down below in the description what exactly is interesting for you to know, because then I can take some time to take a closer look at it and make a follow-up video on those specific sections in Wazuh. Alright, so that's it about the configuration assessment in Wazuh. I think this is really important, but I still want to go through some other capabilities of this platform that I think are really important for us HomeLab people. The next one that I think is absolutely important is the malware detection. So this makes sure that your system isn't infected by any malware, so it can check specific things on the device. It mainly uses the file integrity monitoring module, the FIM, and also the root check module on your device to make sure there are no rootkits installed on your system. And it goes through some suspicious telemetry items that might pop up in the logs and that you should take care of. So let's go back to the overview dashboard. The malware detection is still under the endpoint security group, so let's go in here. And as you can see in my HomeLab, there are a couple of events popping up in here, mainly with the rule host-based anomaly detection event, so the root check module that reported some incidents. Now, if you want to go in a bit more detail here, and that is the case for all of the Wazuh dashboards, you could always filter everything, right? So when you click on a specific rule level with the plus icon, that adds a filter on top here that says rule level 7. So now we are only seeing events that apply to that specific filter. You could also add other filters in here. For example, if you want to see a specific agent here, you can search for the agent name and select the agent. So for example, if you only want to see events on my production server 1, we can add this filter here manually, and now only those events show up here. So this is the main dashboard where you can see what has occurred in the last 24 hours. We now could also go a little back in time, because I usually sometimes turn my servers on and off and then they're not gathering any telemetry at all. So for example, let's just see the last 7 days. So now when we update it, you can see there are always a couple of events that pop up here. So Wazuh has some specific times where those scannings are happening. You can see it in the logs here that those are some spikes when the module detected something. And if we now go into the events, you can see all the log items from the agents here. So for example, here that was just today, a few hours ago, there was an event happening reporting that specific file, saying that the file is owned by root and has written permissions to anyone. So those events, and this is always the case when you're doing security researching like that, you have to go through those events, carefully review them. Again, some items might be important, some others might not be important. For example, I know for sure this file just has to be owned by the root user because it's created by the Docker daemon. So this is not really a bad thing on my devices, but it could be on a different system. So that's why it is really important to go through these events, especially when you see some spikes in the dashboard where something suspicious is happening. You can filter those events. For example, you can click on that malware activity and then you can filter by time and see what is actually going on. Now, it is also worth noting that this is not a traditional anti-malware scanning technique. So this is using the FIM and root check modules here. But what is pretty cool in Wazuh, if you go to the capabilities, you can learn that this malware detection can be integrated with a bunch of different scanning techniques. For example, it can be integrated in ClamAV, which is an anti-malware or an antivirus scanning engine for Linux. Or you could also integrate it in VirusTotal to add some advanced threat intelligence to files. So this is pretty cool, yeah? It by default provides a base level of malware detection of the FIM and root check module. But to be really powerful, you would have to customize it a little and integrate it with other tools. So I think I also need to make some follow-up videos on those specific topics, but I will definitely need some more time to review it and experiment with those things. So maybe I try to find out how to integrate it in VirusTotal or ClamAV. I think that would be the next logical thing for me to try out. But let me also quickly go through some of the other sections of the Wazuh platform. Let's jump into threat intelligence for a second. I think there are some items that might be important to HomeLab people, some others might not. For example, the threat hunting and MITRE ATT&CK framework is mainly a tool for security analysts and security researching. So there are all sorts of log events happening here, and they are categorized by the MITRE ATT&CK framework to get some better visibility of in which category they are and what are the different attack techniques. So now, as a security analyst, you would have to jump in those different sections and filter those events and see if there is anything suspicious happening. But I think you can see there are so many events happening on even a small HomeLab environment that you can imagine how it would look like in a company. So this is why usually in security operations centers, many people are working on those things and help companies stay secure. I think for us HomeLab people, there's another section that might be a bit more interesting. And this is the vulnerability detection section. So this is just recently refined in the new version of Wazuh. And this is super cool to get a quick overview of how secure your environment is. And as you can see, there are a couple of items that I probably should review on my devices. I would always start with the critical severity items. Some others like the low severity you can do later. But the critical things, there are just a few vulnerabilities that get such a high rating, and those are typically the ones that you should take a look first. So when you click on that number, Wazuh is applying a new filter to only see the critical events here. As you can see, there's one CVE that occurred on one of my Ubuntu machines, the server production 7, and there's one package affected by it, the node IP package. So to get some more insight into the actual events that occurred, you can go to inventory. So this is a list of all of the CVEs, vulnerabilities that have been found on your systems based on all the filters that you have applied, and you can go through that list and check what is the CVE, and what is the severity, what is the affected package, and so on. And then you can copy the CVE and look them up on the NVD NIST.government page under vulnerabilities. So this is the website of the National Institute of Standard and Technology, which contains a huge vulnerability database that contains information about all CVEs that are publicly known. Those are always unique to very specific vulnerabilities. You get more information about this. So here, this is the vulnerability that was found on my production server 7. There we can look up the general description. So what exactly is the vulnerability? Those are things that I just have to take a look at. But also, if you remove the critical filter, you can see there are a couple of other vulnerability severities here. You can filter it by the severity, go through some of the high items here. You can see there are some vulnerabilities in the Python 3.10 minimal packages here on my Ubuntu servers. So maybe if there is an update to Python 3.11, that might help on the machine. Generally speaking, if you see those vulnerabilities, it is always the best idea to update all your packages and your servers before reviewing those items, because many of those might have already been fixed in updated versions. So that's why it is important to stay up to date with all of your security patches on your devices. So make sure you update everything and then go from critical to high. And then you can also take a look at the medium and low severity items and make your HomeLab more and more secure. Okay, so we have already covered a bunch of different techniques that you can use to increase the security level in your HomeLab. There's one thing that I also want to quickly show you because it just caught my attention. As you might know, I'm a big fan of Docker. I like to deploy everything in Docker. So it is no surprise that this menu here caught my attention, the cloud security section, Docker. Now, this comes from the cloud security module in Wazuh, which increases the security of some cloud-native platforms like AWS, Microsoft Azure, GCP, but it also has a Docker module to get and collect telemetry items from devices that have the Docker engine installed. But this is not enabled by default. This is something you have to configure on your agents because some of your servers might have the Docker engine installed, some others might not. It only makes sense to enable it when you install the Docker engine. Now, how to do this is, let us quickly go to the demo instance. So once you deployed the agent on the Linux service, you find all the files in the /var os security folder. So make sure to log into the root user and go into that directory. And here you can find all the files required for the agent, as well as one configuration directory where you find some general config files like the ossec.conf, which is the main configuration file for the Wazuh agent. And here you can configure a bunch of different settings here. You can also see here is the server address configured, and here you can also add custom configurations to those files. If you see a lot of false positives for some specific folders, you could add them to the exclusion list here. Or if you want to enable something, for example, the Docker module, you can just add another section in here, enable the Docker listener, for example. And then what you have to do, just need to restart the Wazuh agent, and that enables the Docker listener, for example. And then if you go back to Wazuh, you can see those servers are reporting telemetry data for Docker containers. So whenever a container starts something or there is a specific action happening in a container, Wazuh gets the full visibility of those processes, and it ultimately makes your containers more secure. If there is anything bad happening, those things would pop up in other sections of the platform. Of course, we haven't touched on a bunch of other capabilities. I mean, there is a whole section about GDPR if you want to know if your HomeLab services and devices are compliant to GDPR. I mean, who cares? But in a professional IT environment where you're working with a lot of customers from Europe, it might be so incredibly useful to know whether your devices and services are compliant to GDPR and some of the other regulations. Just in a HomeLab, I probably would never play around with it. Alright guys, so that's it about the Wazuh platform so far. I hope you could learn something new, even though we barely touched on all of the capabilities of this platform. But I believe what we've covered today should give you a good starting point for all your future experiments and researching, because just like I said, security is a very broad topic, and while threat hunting and security analysis is very interesting, I think the vast majority of HomeLab people will benefit from Wazuh mostly because of its configuration assessment and the reporting for built-in detections. I will definitely spend some more time working on those two topics, especially the configuration assessment, and once I've made my way through all of the best practices I could find, I will let you know what are the most important items you should take a closer look at. Alright, so that's it for today. Many thanks for watching, enjoy the rest of your day, and as always, a big thanks goes out to all my supporters on Patreon. You guys are just the best, and I'll catch up with you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.